Hi, I'm Alana. Welcome to another video. In today's video we're doing a get ready with me for church. So I just finished reading one really good book called The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, and it's a bit confusing at first. It's like these letters from this guy's uncle to him, and so they're like, dear my dear Wormwood, and then at the end they say, love your Uncle Screwtape. And for like almost the whole book I thought it was actually true, but it is a work of fiction by C.S. Lewis, and it basically talks about like the devil and his kingdom, like the devil's kingdom in hell. And he's telling his nephew, like giving him tips on how to deal with a patient of his, and he's talking from the perspective of like basically like a demon in hell. And so he's talking about like how like the tricks of the trade that demons use to get people to hell. And he talks about like our Father, as in referring to the devil, and then he calls the enemy, he calls God the enemy. But it's the best book I've read in so long. I read it in almost a single sitting. It's really good. And like, yeah, so I thought it was actually true. Like I thought it was a real letter from like a demon who was in hell. I did. For like almost the whole book I thought that it was a real letter from an actual demon from hell. Well, real letters from an actual demon in hell. But it is a work of fiction that C.S. Lewis conjured up somehow with his brilliant mind. But it's really like insightful and gives really good like insights into how the devil operates. So yeah, it offers really good insights into how the devil operates. I'm not sure how C.S. Lewis came up with it, but it's really beautifully written, and it actually makes a lot of sense too. Like it offers really good, genuine insights into how the devil operates, because the devil and his demons, they want to get people to hell. Like that is their aim, is to get more people into Satan's kingdom in hell. And so he talks about like all the subtle ways that you can like undermine his prayer routine, like make him believe that the posture, the position that you're sitting in doesn't matter when you pray. Like make him believe that you don't need to be on your knees. And so like he's talking about all these different strategies to like subtly undermine his prayer routine, and then like all these different strategies to like create tension between he and his mother, and like to make him be so lacking in self-awareness that he doesn't see the things that he is doing that irritate his mother and that irritate other people. He only sees like the things in other people that irritate him. And like he talks about how the devil aims to like distort and contort everything that God has made in his image. Like, so the devil's aim is to take God's creation and like warp it and distort it and make it all like ugly and not right. And so he talks about like the ways that you can do that. You can lure them in with like sex and drugs, and yeah, it's basically just about like how the devil operates and the different ways in which he subtly like brings people into his kingdom. And then it talks about like jokes and like the nature of jokes and joking, and how like joy is not very helpful to the devil, because joy is a feeling that brings people closer to God. But then there are other kinds of like joking and laughter that do bring people closer to the devil, like flippancy, for instance. When people are joking and laughing in a flippant manner, that is something that is going to bring them closer to the devil, closer to going to hell. So yeah, that's the Screwtape Letters. It's a really good book. I read it in almost a single sitting. It's an absolutely delicious book. And then I started reading The Fantasy Bond by Robert Firestone. And this is about the structure of psychological defenses. So it's about like fantasy bonds are basically bonds that bring people together, but they're not legitimate bonds. Like genuine bonds would be marked by things like loyalty and trust, whereas fantasy bonds are like fantasy bonds. So they are psychological defenses that people develop when, say for instance, if your mother shows you hate but calls it love, then you will develop psychological defenses to protect yourself from the pain of that. So in your future relationships, you will look for someone who shows you hate but calls it love, and then like you will also act out and like push them away in ways that reinforce your belief that hate is love, and like protect you from actually feeling any of your feelings. And he talks about emotional deadness and how so many people these days are like emotionally dead inside and they just like numb themselves, and how that is a psychological defense that manifests after, say, if your parent shows you hate but calls it love, then that's a psychological defense that will manifest as a result of that. And that looks like you being mean and like being cruel and being unkind to the person who you're in a relationship with, but then like when they call it out, you just kind of like stop responding, and so you're both kind of just like locked in this strange pattern of abusing one another but calling it love, because that's how your parents treated you. And yeah, it talks about how like he held a retreat. I think he's probably a psychotherapist. He held a retreat for his clients, and like all of these people came from the cities and wherever they lived, and like for this 1 week that they spent together, they were like actually showing emotions and like talking about their feelings and like crying. And then he was really disheartened to see that once they returned to their real lives, most of them like abandoned that like realness and abandoned like crying and like talking about their feelings, and just went back into their patterns of emotional deadness. And he talks about one guy who he was like really unhappy in his marriage, and they were stuck in a fantasy bond, like a pattern of abusing one another and calling it love. But he would love to go and watch movies where like people were like the bad guy was redeemed in the end, or like where in the end someone found like real love, because like movies were a safe way for him to experience that like genuine love and like genuine relationships. But he didn't, and like he thought that was what he wanted, but he didn't actually in reality want that genuine real love, because his fantasy bonds like kept him protected. They kept him safe from ever feeling anything real. And yeah, so I've only just started reading this book, but So I'm like 40 pages in, but it talks about like emotional deadness and how so many people protect themselves from all of their feelings so that they don't have to feel anything. But like if you protect yourself from the pain, then you also protect yourself from like the joy and the love and like the happiness. And so yeah, so those books were The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis and Fantasy Bond by Robert Firestone. Thank you for getting ready with me for church today. You're beautiful, you're perfect, I love you, God bless you. If you're new, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.